I know what you're thinking. Yes, fantasy football drafts are already happening. So today, we are going to give you 6 of our favorite picks right now over on Underdog Fantasy to help you dominate your leagues and win up to literally millions in prizes. And Cameron, what's nice about this episode is that we mentioned it in the audio version of this episode is that we are bringing you players in each level of your drafts. We're going to start at the top of the draft and work our way down, starting with your favorite pick in the earlier rounds, which is A.J. Brown.
Yeah, honestly, I thought you were going to say the best part of this episode is there's no Tyler, which I was going to agree with. We can talk about A.J. Brown instead. Yeah, and some people might look at this and go, he's being taken in the middle of the second round. Well, A.J. Brown had his worst season in Philadelphia last year, and he was wide receiver 12 in points per game. I mean, we're taking him at his floor. He only played 13 games, but he was still on pace for 87 receptions, 127 targets, 1,395 yards, and 9 touchdowns. That's a down year for A.J. Brown. A down year. Since he's gotten to Philly, he's averaging 5.5 receptions, 88.5 yards, and half a touchdown a game, or 14.5 half PPR fantasy points a game, which would have been wide receiver 8 this year. He was all like, and the Eagles, I know they ran the ball a lot. They're not going to run the ball more. You know how I know that? Because they ran the ball 70 more times than every other team last year. There was a team last year that had Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry on it, and they ran the ball 70 more times than them. Okay. They had 400 more yards than the team in third place because Baltimore did have more yards. They were more efficient, but 400 more yards than the Commanders. And they had 29 rushing touchdowns last year, which was tied for second with Detroit and just behind Buffalo. So, I mean, Philly was as run heavy as they possibly could. And this guy was still averaging over 14 half PPR points per game. He was still top 12. I wanted almost to do Devonta Smith. He was the name I wrote down first. But when I look at this Philly team, there's one constant outside of Saquon Barkley, and it's A.J. Brown. He is always going to get his, no matter who's on the field, no matter how they line up, no matter what the game is, he's going to get his. And that's why even at wide receiver 10, I still find myself taking him constantly in drafts.
Yeah, he is like the easiest middle of the second round click for me, no questions asked, because even if the Philadelphia Eagles aren't going to run the ball, aren't going to throw the ball, even close to the league average, it helps when you're commanding a 31% target share, which A.J. Brown was commanding last year. The only player to command a higher target share than him last year was Malik Neighbors at 32%. All right, so the lead target getter in this offense is A.J. Brown. They are going to feed him. He is the alpha. He's going to collect the most touchdowns, the most passing or receiving touchdowns on this team. Excuse me. It's a no-brainer because you also know you have a guy who has potentially top 5 upside if things go right. If something happens to a Devonta Smith, if Dallas Goedert isn't fully healthy, A.J. Brown has the ability to command just one, a crazy amount of targets, but 2, rack up the yardage and rack up the touchdowns on top of it because he is the number 1 read, hands down, no questions about it.
Yeah, I mean, his 2 seasons before, he's wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6. Jalen Hurts is yet to throw for 4,000 passing yards in a season. He's yet to throw for 26 passing touchdowns. Like, right? It's not like Jalen Hurts has been lighting it up on the stat sheet.
Right.
He really hasn't. And A.J. Brown's performed. You talked about his target share. He had 50% air yard share last year. That's insane. 50% of air yards went to him, and I think if I'm right, he had 41% of team yards overall when he was on the field. So, I mean, the dude's just dominant when he's out there. Everyone knows the ball's going to him. He still performs.
No question about it. Even look week 6 on when he was dealing with injury in that first part of the season as well.
Yes.
You look from week 6 on too. I mean, it's just stupid numbers. He was the wide receiver 6 overall. Was still wide receiver 12 in fantasy points per game as well. So when A.J. Brown is out there, he's absolutely dominating. And if you want to dominate your fantasy football leagues this year, make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell as well. I promise, if you love fantasy football even half as much as we do, you will absolutely love our channel because all we do is talk fantasy football content and help you win your leagues on the way to hopefully winning ours as well. We're all in this together. So again, if you enjoy fantasy football content, make sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell as well for all sorts of fantasy football content every single week. I'm going to talk about a wide receiver as well, Cameron.
Yes.
He's a little bit further down the board as well, but it's Davante Adams now on the Los Angeles Rams. And to me, there is just a flat tier here from T. Higgins at wide receiver 12. You don't see him pictured on the YouTube graphic, but T. Higgins and Garrett Wilson are wide receivers 12 and 13. To Davante Adams at wide receiver 19. This is just one big, giant, flat tier to me. Because Davante Adams last year was still the wide receiver 10 and half PPR points per game. And you even look after he was traded to the Jets, it only got better. He was the wide receiver 9 and half PPR points per game, en route to being the wide receiver 5 overall over the back half of last season. And I think his situation only got better because he's now attached to the best offense he's been a part of since he was a member of the Green Bay Packers with Aaron Rodgers. And I know Puka's still wide receiver 1. Like, I get it. He's not the alpha of all alphas in this offense, which means he isn't going to command a 28% target share like he did in New York last year. But is anybody going to be surprised if Puka and Davante combine for like 50% of this team's targets? Yeah. Like, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised by that. If Puka's commanding like a 27%, Davante Adams a 23%, if they split 25%, if they go over 50%, I wouldn't be surprised either. So I think there's still plenty of juice here for Davante Adams. There's still plenty of creativity in Sean McVay's offense. This is just a smash at wide receiver 19 because if I miss out on all those guys ahead of him, actually, I prefer Davante Adams to Tyreek Hill, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
To Jackson Smith and Chigba, maybe. To Marv. Like, what has Marv done to put himself ahead of Davante Adams, right? Like, you can create a case for Davante Adams ahead of any one of these guys. And really, the only reason why these guys are being drafted ahead of him, with the exception of T. Higgins, is that there's no other alpha in their offense to take targets from them. Like, that's the only reason why we're pushing Davante down. It's just a screaming smash in this offense at wide receiver 19.
For sure. And, I talked about this with Ty last week. The tier that Davante's in, we did put T. We slid him up a little bit higher into that. Sure. We kind of we had like a couple half tiers and then got to this one. But yeah, like you said, 10 players we had in this tier. Tier below it, we had 20, but this tier we had 10. And I was talking about it with Puka last year, weeks 8 to 14, because right after week 14, Cooper Kupp disappeared. Like, Sean McVay went, we don't use you anymore at all. Like, we don't throw the ball your way. But before that, weeks 8 to 14, Puka Nacua and half PPR. And I will say the reason we use half PPR when we're talking about underdog is because that's what they use.
That's the format.
Right? They're half PPR format. Puka Nacua was wide receiver 2 from weeks 8 to 14. He was second in targets. He had 17 fantasy points per game. Only Jamar Chase had more. Jamar Chase had 25.4 fantasy points per game, which is ridiculous in half PPR. That's ridiculous in full PPR. To do that in half is otherworldly. But Cooper Kupp was wide receiver 5 during that stretch.
Yeah.
Cooper Kupp was a top 5 wide receiver in targets during that stretch. I mean, they had 2 top 5 wide receivers in targets. So like you said, this offense is already built around being able to sustain 2 wide receivers as long as they're both healthy and playing well. And if you watch Davante Adams last season, I know you can say he's just buddy with Aaron Rodgers. I don't know. They still went to Davante Adams over Garrett Wilson. And I think Garrett Wilson's a pretty good stinking wide receiver. So it's like, he's good enough where you're still having those top 10 conversations as an NFL wide receiver about him. Yeah, you put him with Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford, and he could look like an absolute steal at the wide receiver 19.
I'm going to sound like a broken record all off season long, talking about how Sean McVay is going to have so much fun shifting these guys all around the formation. You're going to get Puka starting to probably play in the slot a little bit more. You're going to get Davante Adams. Look, hey, if Davante Adams is playing in the slot from here on out because he's 32 years old, for how freaking good of a route runner he is, for how crafty he is, hey, that ain't the worst thing in the world if you're going to leave him, absolutely wide open across the middle of the field. So Sean McVay's going to have so much fun scheming these guys up. It's the best offense, like I said, he's been a part of since Green Bay. And Stafford's still got something in the tank. They've got him locked up for the foreseeable future as well. So, yeah, this is just a screaming smash here for Davante Adams. I get it if this is the range where you're like, but running backs. I'm telling you, this tier is so flat here. Like, if Davante Adams were to shoot up to the wide receiver 13, the wide receiver 12, I'm okay with it because I know he gives me top 10 upside. We'll pivot positions here, Cameron. We'll go to your second favorite pick in early drafts. I really like this value here as well, and that is Joe Mixon of the Houston Texans.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've said it on a couple episodes of like, why are we discounting Joe Mixon so much? Oh, he had a bad 4-game stretch, and it just, but
it mattered most. But
yes, and it happened at the end of the year, so you remember, right? You have the cuts from it, but that doesn't mean he's faded. Like, I think that's the issue I have with Joe Mixon is everyone's like, he's 28 this year. He's not going to be efficient. When was the last time Joe Mixon was efficient? When was the last time the dude had over 4.5 yards per carry? I don't remember it. If you can find it for me, because he just isn't. That's not the way he's ever played. He's been an absolute just grinder behind bad offensive lines. That's what he does. And you know what? Houston didn't do anything to bring in competition for Joe Mixon this year. They brought in Woody Marks. That's it. That's the only change from last year. And I'm sorry, but I don't see Woody Marks seeing 150 carries this year. I don't see him challenging Joe Mixon for lead back. He still is a receiving threat out of the backfield. He had 245 carries and 52 targets in 14 games last year. Weeks 1 to 13, he was the running back 8 in points per game. I don't know if you guys remember, but he just an absolute tear. He was on. It was like 25 fantasy points, 26 fantasy points. I traded him away in our dynasty league, and I'm sitting there like, well, this sucks. I mean, obviously it helped during fantasy playoffs. I had gotten Jonathan Taylor out of the trade, so all of a sudden it flipped, and I was like, holy cow, this is the greatest trade I've ever made. But that little stretch, it was like, eh. But that's just what I think of. So many players have really bad 3-4 game stretches.
Yes.
And we don't discount them in the next season. Joe Mixon's just, like you said, came when it mattered most. Does that mean it's going to happen again this year? I'm sure Joe Mixon, the way his career has gone, is going to have a bad 3-game stretch.
Yeah.
But if this year is from weeks 8 to 11 and he's the same running back the rest of the time, you're pretty happy. I don't think watching Joe Mixon, I don't think he just faded down the stretch. I don't think all of a sudden he couldn't run anymore, right? The wheels fell off. That's not what I saw from Mixon. Offensive line, not going to be that much better. Marginally better, maybe. But it's not like it's fixed overnight. You know, like it was really bad last year. So it's not going to be worse. That's kind of where I'm at with Houston.
No, yeah. And that was one of the things I was going to bring up was, well, first and foremost, I'll get back to you on the last time Joe Mixon averaged 4.5 yards per carry in a season. We got to go back to 2018. He averaged 4.9 that season. So it's been 6-7 years since
Is that
Joe
his only
Mixon
season too?
Yes, that's his only season above 4.5. Otherwise, it's been 4.1, 4, 3.9, 4.1, 3.6, 4.1, 3.5. You tell me which one is the outlier when you throw 4.9 in there. The other thing I was going to bring up was his offensive line play. Because I think you can make a case that it isn't going to get better this season. I think with a new unit that you are freshly rebuilt, you literally tore apart your old unit. You sent them out, traded them away, cut them, whatever you did. You're bringing in a whole new fresh unit that has to build up continuity with one another now. And I don't think trading away Laramie Tunsil makes your offensive line better. I would rather have Laramie Tunsil on my offensive line than not have Laramie Tunsil. So, like, there's nuances there where it's like, yeah, the offensive line play was really bad last year. I don't want to just assume it's going to get better because they did an overhaul. So I get that's also why people are probably discounting Joe Mixon here as well. But I don't know, man. Running back 16 in this economy feels a little bit disrespectful when, you know, look, I love Amari Hampton as much as the next guy. I'm not just going to assume Najee Harris is just a nobody right away out of the season. And Amari Hampton would have to have a phenomenal second half of the season if he's splitting with Najee at the start of the season. We just don't know what that split's going to be. We don't know what the timeline is for getting Amari Hampton as many touches as possible. That's all I'm trying to state with that. James Cook, what happens when he holds out because he's not getting $20 million?
Yeah.
What happens when he doesn't score 16 touchdowns last year?
Yeah, that's a big one.
I'm just pointing out, like, we could play this game with all the running backs ahead of Joe Mixon, right? Breece Hall, are we sure he's the running back one? I think he is. Don't hear what I'm not saying there, but we can paint this picture 1,000 different ways where we can say, hey, you know what, Joe Mixon at running back 16, maybe I would rather have him ahead of Breece Hall at the running back 13. Kyron Williams, Jarquez Hunter, anybody? No, that one's a stretch, but you get what I'm trying to say. Is like all it takes is for one piece of news to come out about any of these running backs, and all of a sudden Joe Mixon is on the rise, right? Yeah. Or one favorable thing about Joe Mixon and how efficient he is during camp, playing behind this new offensive line, his stock is on the rise, right? it's just an easy click when, he's going 50 and Kyron Williams is basically going 20 picks ahead of him.
Definitely.
That's all we're trying to say here, right? Is if
sure.
we get anything close to last season from Joe Mixon, this is an absolute steal at running back 16.
Yeah, I think the last.
Go ahead. Yep.
I was just gonna say the last thing I would say is just remember we have transitioned from dynasty time. So if you hate him for like age wise, I understand. I'm asking for one more year out of Joe Mixon. Yeah, I'm not asking for the future, right? That's all you're hoping. 17 games. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have guaranteed money after this year. They're going to run the wheels out of Joe Mixon. Hopefully they can get the best out of him. Like that feels like the game plan going in. I'd be shocked if it's anything different.
Yeah, I believe he only has $2 million on his contract.
Yep.
He's a $2 million dead cap, next year. They do have a potential out after this year. So yeah, all we need is one more season. Yep. Joe Mixon. Why don't we take a quick break here, Cameron? We'll hear from our friends over at Underdog and all the great contests they have coming up this summer. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. So far, we've identified. Let me start all over. I literally forgot who we were talking about. 3, 2, 1. Alrighty, we are back. And so far, we have identified AJ Brown, Davante Adams, Joe Mixon as 3 tremendously good picks in fantasy football drafts right now over on Underdog Fantasy. We're going to get to our next pick here, Cameron. Tyjae Hockenson. The ADP doesn't align with the rest of the tight end landscape, if you're asking me. Because right now, he's being drafted closer to Jonnu Smith, who we're expecting big regression from this season. He's being drafted closer to Jonnu than Sam Laporta. And I think, maybe this is a hot take. I'm curious to hear what the comments have to say on this. So let me know, comments. You can light me on fire if you disagree. But I just see more upside in Tyjae Hockenson than Sam Laporta, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Hockenson last year, after coming back from his knee injury, was pacing for nearly 100 targets and 71 catches. All right? That's some crazy volume in a Sam Darnold, Kevin O'Connell offense. You pivot to J.J. McCarthy, I wouldn't be surprised if Tyjae Hockenson maintains that target share, if not gets peppered with even more targets as a safety blanket for J.J. McCarthy. And Sam Laporta, look, we say it's a down year for him. And if you want to point at the touchdown, sure, but he still caught 7 of them compared to 10 in his rookie season. And he still only finished as a tight end 9.5 PPR points per game. So to me, when we're looking at the 7th, 8th round of fantasy drafts, like Hockenson is going right on that 7-8 turn. I think it's just silly. When you're looking at the wide receiver 46, 47, basically wide receivers 46 to 50 hardly scratched 120 fantasy points last year. This is just a screaming value when, hey, you know what? If things fall right for TJ Hockenson, if he catches more than 1 touchdown, which I also think there's positive regression due there, Hockenson has top 3 upside. Like, let's not be silly about this. If things fall correctly, tight end 5 is an absolute steal of a value in the 7th, 8th round after I've already built out some wide receivers, running backs, and even taken an elite quarterback on my team.
Yeah, I mean, you don't look at J.J. McCarthy in college too. His favorite weapon, Colson Loveland. Like, I mean, the dude's already throwing to tight ends. Now you get TJ Hockenson. To me, from a fantasy perspective, right? I'm not saying necessarily talent-wise, from a fantasy perspective, feels similar to AJ Brown. And the fact that he's 27 years old, and so we discount him as like this older guy. And it's like, he's in the middle of his prime right now. Yeah. There is no reason we should be like, he's fading out. I mean, he is 27. He's going to be a full year and a half, almost 2 years removed from his ACL tear. Over the back half of the season, once he started playing full-time, he was top 6 in targets. He was averaging 12.3 yards per reception, which for a tight end is pretty good, which is showing you, hey, the dude was healthy because he's catching the ball downfield, right? It's not just dinks and dumps. He's getting downfield. if you look at his fantasy production, you're like, oh, that's kind of rough. It's because he didn't have a touchdown at all last season.
Mhm.
So he's coming back into it. When he's healthy, he is the second option in this passing game.
Yeah.
Right. He's proven that over and over. Vikings rewarded him with a contract. He's the second option. And like I said, he's 27. He's going to be fully healthy this year. It doesn't make sense why we've discounted him so much when he really should be, like you said, he should be in the Laporta range. Him and Laporta are very interchangeable right now this year. And it's like, is it just the rookie quarterback? Is that why we're worried?
Right.
And it feels like Kevin O'Connell kind of dispelled the I can work with whatever quarterback you throw me. Like, we're gonna put up points, we're gonna put up yards. So it's just like, I don't know. I don't understand the discount, and maybe that's our hometown bias because we're just like, we've seen it from Hockenson the last couple of years, but yeah, it just feels kind of silly that he's going as late as he is.
Well, let's not pretend Sam Laporta doesn't have his question marks either.
Oh,
like,
100%.
sure, there's a quarterback change in Minnesota. You have a whole offensive coordinator change in Detroit. I understand, the rapport is built there between Goff and Sam Laporta at this point, but there's just flat out like usage that I'm curious. I don't want to say concerns, but like usage questions of how is this offensive system going to change with Sam Laporta. I'm not concerned about that with TJ Hockenson. I'm just concerned about, hey, can JJ McCarthy get him the football?
Yeah.
And to me, again, I'm trying not to let hometown bias seep into this, but like, to me, that's less of a concern than having Ben Johnson leave town.
Yeah.
That's just where I'm at. And again, maybe it's just like, shut up, you homers. You can let us know in the comments, but that just feels like less of a concern to me. And even with how abysmal the tight end landscape is, if TJ Hawkins, I find it hard to believe that after a full year removed from his ACL now, I just don't see how we get anything lower than like the tight end 6 or 7 this year. And if I really have to pay the tight end 5 price tag for that, fine, but I'm not out big bucks. Like I could be with Laporta, because what happens when Laporta is the tight end 10 again this year? That's all I'm pointing out. So Hockenson to me is I'm going to have an irresponsible amount of TJ Hockenson exposure this year.
He's already my highest drafted player.
I was going to say he is my second highest drafted player right now. And I'm through like 15 drafts. So yeah, Hockenson, I have an irresponsible amount of him right now, but wonderful value at basically 84th overall in fantasy drafts. Let's start diving deep down the board, Cameron. Yes. We started at the top. We're getting down there now. I'm really curious to hear your case on Tyjae Spears, because he's one of the players you wanted to put in this video.
Yeah, and I understand. You're right away. You're like the running back 2 on maybe the worst, second, third, fourth worst team in the NFL. What are we doing here?
Out of 8 offense in the league, yeah.
Why is this our go-to here? And my answer is, at the running back 42 spot, right? You're getting down in drafts. It gets gross there. I don't see a lot of running backs who have as good of a path to consistent fantasy production as I think Tyjae Spears does. Mm-hmm. And trust me, I get it. It's gross, but Tony Pollard's the guy in front of him right now who's going to be 28 years old this season. He hasn't looked great 2 seasons in a row. He looked better than Spears last year. Like, don't get me wrong. He was definitely better than Spears was, but he could definitely be on his way out after this next season. Tyjae Spears is going to go, he's got 2 years left on his contract. So Titans are going to want to see a little bit more of truly how much can he handle, because you go into next year, it's like, can we trust him a little bit more and wait on running back, or does running back have to be a priority, right? That's going to be the conversations they have to have. Brian Callen has already came out and said, we want a more balanced attack in this backfield. We saw a lot of Tony Pollard last year. We would like to see this closer to 50-50. He did say too, the big reason was Tony Pollard was just better running the ball. Yeah. That's where it came from. Spears only had 84 rush attempts last year. He was the running back 38 in points per game though. So, right. He was already out producing where he's at. I don't think it gets worse. Their passing attack was about as bad as it gets. What gets me excited back couple of games of the season, 15, 16, 17. I know Tony Pollard's dealing with injuries, but we saw 56, 61, 65% of snaps, 24, 20, and 11 fantasy points per game. Yeah. It helps that he found the end zone, right? Week 15, he only had 4 rush attempts, but he did see 7 targets. I'm betting on the fact that he's going to be closer to truly a 1B in this offense than the fact that he's going to be firmly at that running back 2, that he is a passing game specialist more on a bad team who's going to need to throw the ball. Cam Ward's going to need to get it out quickly. That's kind of what I'm betting on here. I understand it's gross, but I've been taking a lot of Tyjae Spears because I do see, hey, he's at least got he's got a clear path to finding more rush attempts. He's got a clear path to finding more receptions. It's just, you have to bet it. You're betting on the player at that point. Like Tyjae Spears actually has to take a step forward as a football player. Right. That's where it comes from.
Yeah, and I think that's where my biggest question mark lies within that is it's not necessarily that I look, and this is a guy who absolutely loves Tyjae Spears. I think he's a great talent. I think he could be a very solid starting NFL running back, but I just question if he's going to have the opportunity to take that step forward. Because like you said, I mean, Tony Pollard, they have an out after this year. He's basically potentially a 1-year rental. Do they want to just run the brakes off of Tony Pollard? What happens if he has a James Conner-esque season like last year? Again, that's what we kept saying about James Conner was, well, what if they're just going to run the brakes off of him?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then now James Conner gets a 2-year contract on top of it. So and that's not me saying, we're off a dynasty. I'm not projecting to the future, but what if the Titans instead, what happens if it's the same story as last year? We want a more balanced attack. Crap, Tony Pollard actually looks like the guy. Well, we're just going to run the brakes off of him. We only got 1 more year of him, so let's see how much more he can handle. I think that's unlikely. I do think they probably want to come with a little more balanced attack and after what Tyjae Spears was able to show at the end of last season. I think I just have difficulty taking him when I'm not confident in that ability to get on the field, when I can look at Ray Davis a few running backs later. Is he a full round after Tyjae Spears? He is. Like a Ray Davis, Tyler Algier. Like, I understand they are firmly running back 2s and they need something to happen to their running back 1 in order to get playing time. But I like, what's the cost benefit analysis of that? I'm not sure. So that's the only reason, that's the only like dissonance I feel with this. Because I also click a lot of Tyjae Spears. I think he's kind of the end of this year before it's like, boom, firm running back 2s in their offenses. That being said, I don't know if I shared the same optimism, but I look at the guys after Trey Benson, Rachaad White. I would prefer Tyjae Spears to all of them. Maybe Rachaad White. Ty would argue for Rachaad White, but he's not here to talk up Rachaad White. So
we don't bring up his name. But my other thing on Spears is he had 2 concussions last year, hamstring strain and an ankle sprain.
True.
So like, I mean, he's battling injuries. What also gives me hope is the year before 2023, we're talking about a guy who played, I think he played more snaps than Derrick Henry.
I believe that's true. I don't
want to. He had 100 carries,
but
yeah, 100 carries, 70 yards. Obviously, that team, it's a different offensive coordinator, different head. Like, the whole team is different than when it was. But he was at least good enough to get on the field where they were like, we can trust him to give Derrick Henry a break. He had 4.5 yards per carry that season. Obviously, you can attribute some of that to the Derrick Henry effect of when Spears is on the field, you're not expecting to run. But I'm just saying that, like, I do think that we've seen that he can be good enough to do it in 2023. 2024, just battling injuries. So I'm kind of buying that injury bug a little bit with him there. I'm not, and that's the thing too. Like, I'm buying him at running back 42 to hopefully crack the top 30 running backs. I'm not saying that he's going to be a top 24 running back. I'm not saying he's going to be your running back 2 that you're going to be, he's going to be a flex play week to week, and it might be even matchup dependent.
Sure.
But that's what you're hoping for in this area. Right. Like you said, Ray Davis, who you're clicking on, you're not hoping that Ray Davis is all of a sudden a top 12 running back the next week. You're hoping, hey, not hoping. You're just saying, hey, if James Cook holds out, if James Cook gets hurt, there's a path here for him to be a low end, running back 2, maybe a flex play. That's the same. Like, if Pollard gets hurt, he could be a low end running back 2, high end running back 3.
Sure.
But I do understand at the same time, like with a Ray Davis, I do think he has a higher upside if James Cook gets hurt than Tyjae Spears has his Tony. Yeah. If Tony Pollard gets hurt for Tyjae Spears.
And just for context, Ray Davis is my most drafted player right now. So there's extra context and where my bias leans on that. And to totally fact check you on snaps, Derrick Henry versus Tyjae Spears. I don't have total snaps. I don't remember how many games Derrick Henry. Actually, I should know how many games he played. He did play all 17 in 2023. 52% snap share for Tyjae Spears, 54 for Derrick Henry. So it was almost a 50-50 split. So
yeah, that's pretty wild.
I'll respect to Tyjae Spears. No disrespect to Tyjae Spears whatsoever, but I think Drake May's a little bit more fun to talk about.
Yes,
if we're being
100%.
perfectly honest here. So he's the last guy. We'll climb back up the board slightly by about 10 picks or so here. I think there's just so much upside to be had here in the quarterback 16 price tag, man. In the 10 full games he played as a rookie, 10 full games, context matters there. He was averaging 18.1 fantasy points per game. That was a quarterback 15. All right. So we're already working ahead of ADP if we even just copy and paste those 10 games. All right. Then you factor in that the Patriots began actually improving the state of their offense this offseason. They brought in Stephon Diggs. I get it, coming off of an ACL, but Stephon Diggs has proven to be a productive wide receiver over the course of his NFL career. He is something that isn't Jalen Polk. That isn't, all respect to Pop Douglas. That isn't Keyshawn Boutte. All right. Like, we actually have a wide receiver of substance there now. But then they also drafted Will Campbell, fixed the offensive line a little bit. You brought in Travion Henderson, who is going to be a much more explosive playmaker than Ramondre Stevenson, and Kyle Williams, who we've already sung his praises. If you missed our rookie wide receiver videos, rookies we loved drafting right now, I mean, Kyle Williams has been all over those videos. So we absolutely love Kyle Williams. The other stat that I want to bring up that Andrew Erickson pointed out over at Fantasy Pros, out of 7 quarterbacks with 30-plus rushing yards per game last year, 5 of them finished top 6 at the position on a per dropback basis. So if Drake Maye maintains his rushing ability, I'm not going to tell you he's going to be a Lamar Jackson or Jane Daniels, but can he be like a Bo Nix who can scoot a little bit? Justin Herbert, who we all know can scoot a little bit. Like, if he maintains that rushing upside, we're looking at a guy who could easily finish top 12 this year. So again, the theme of really my players is they're at the bottom of their current tier, and there's just such an easy path for them to totally outperform the 4 or 5 guys ahead of him. Tyjae Hockenson, in this case, being able to outperform Sam Laporta and put himself, in a Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, maybe not in a Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, but to put him closer to George Kittle than to Sam Laporta. So Drake Maye, for me, he's only going to improve in year 2, man. The situation is only better in New England. There's a competent coaching staff there now with Josh McDaniels, who knows a thing or two about running offenses. So Drake Maye, to me, quarterback 16 is just, he's another one I have a hard time not clicking. I believe he's my highest drafted quarterback right now.
Yeah. The only reason he's not up there for me is I love Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert, who go in the same spot.
Touche.
It does give me, like, I do feel good going into drafts because I know I can wait to the spot and I have 3 options that I love to take.
Yes.
You were talking about Drake May's rushing upside. His 17-game pace last year, he would have been running back 4 in rushing yards. Ahead of Kyler Murray.
Rushing yards?
Yep. Ahead of Kyler Murray.
You said running back. I'm like,
quarterback.
What?
Quarterback 4. That's
what?
Yeah. But ahead of Kyler Murray, ahead of Josh Allen, ahead of Caleb Williams, ahead of Bowman Nix. Like, he would have almost had 600 rushing yards last year.
Yeah.
And like you said, they did bring in Diggs, which is awesome. I don't necessarily see that going down this year, though, right? I don't see that he's going to all of a sudden have the luxury to not have to use his legs. If anything, I think he's probably going to get more comfortable doing so.
Yeah.
I also think the fact that he completed almost 67% of his passes with what he had all going on
matters. That matters so much for a rookie quarterback.
100%. I mean, that should tell you, all you need to know. I mean, you look at Anthony Richardson, who completed 47.7, right? I'm just kidding. That was mean. But completion percentage doesn't mean everything.
No.
But the fact he's at 67% shows you, okay, he's reading the defense. He's not just chucking it out there hoping that it sticks, right? He's making good plays. I think Mike Vrabel's a great upgrade. I think he's just a fantastic coach to begin with, right? So I know he's not an offensive guy. I know he's not, calling the plays, but I think just having that mentality coming back, like I think Gerard Mayo did, he was, kind of the sacrificial lamb for New England, unfortunately. Like, I think they just kind of threw him out there and were like, hey, yeah, do your best, but we're going to move on. We have access to Vrabel next year. Is pretty much what they did with him. But I do like you said, bringing in Diggs, and he was just someone that we liked from the get-go last year as a rookie. I mean, there's a reason we went high. We were all really high on him, even if it was like he might have to sit a little bit. He played 12 full games. But yeah, it really is just the rushing upside. That's the difference between even Herbert and Dak is 600 rushing yards. That's a pretty big bump. He throws in 6-7 rushing touchdowns, which, with his size, not out of the realm of possibilities if he's running that much. You have a guy who, he's probably going to see top 10, top 12 quarterback play who, you're getting in the 13th, 12th, or 11th, 12th round. It's hard to beat.
Extremely hard to beat. Yeah, Drake Maye currently going right on that 11th, 12th round turn. So if you want to take advantage of these values and many more over on Underdog, scan that QR code if you're watching over on YouTube in the upper right corner, or if you're listening to the audio feed of this podcast. Use the code FELLAS when you sign up for Underdog. They will give you up to $1,000 in bonus cash to play with as well. They'll even throw a free pick for their Pick'em Lobby your way as well. So lots to be had over on Underdog. Lots of fun to be had. Get in on these early drafts because, again, Cameron and I have talked about exposures. We've talked about how many drafts we've gone through. How many drafts are you through at this point? I mentioned I'm through 15.
I think I'm through 40, and I think I think Ty's pushing 75. So we're both
okay. And so are those? how many of those are slow drafts compared to on the clock?
I'm through 40 regular drafts. I still have 15 slow drafts finished.
Okay, so you are through that many drafts.
This last week I cranked them out. This last week I got a little draft heavy.
Fair enough. My work schedule has not permitted me to hop in the lobby as frequently as I would like, but again, you can catch us drafting the lobbies over on Underdog. To me, these are great supplements for supplements. It's a little bit too early to be doing PPR mock drafts, right? I don't want to say too early. Actually, it's never too early, but slowly over time, you're drafting against real people over on Underdog. There is money on the line. Like a contest anywhere ranging from like $3 to like $100 entries, right? Yeah. So if you're like, hey, I only got $10 to put in my account, great. Draft 3 times over on Underdog. And actually Underdog will give you 50% deposit match on that. So really you'll get 5 drafts, right? So a great way to get in. Stay ready so you don't got to get ready this season. Go draft over on Underdog again. Use code FELLAS when you sign up. Let them know we sent you their way. We'll be back later this week. It'll be Cam and Ty back later this week. Instead of talking about good picks in these drafts, we're going to talk about disastrously bad picks over on Underdog right now. Players you should be avoiding. So again, make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell as well so you know when all of our newest episodes are up, because if you're a fantasy football fanatic like us, you're not going to want to miss our content all offseason long. You can find us on our socials. I am at Lucas Wenzel on X, Camlaw FFF for Cameron. You can find the Fellas accounts as well. FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. We'll see you all later this week. Thanks for tuning in. Deuces.